Hello everyone, Paul Elam here with A Voice for Men. Let me start out by telling everybody that this is going out live, so if I make any verbal gaffes, if I stumble over any words or make any misstatements, they are not going to be edited out. I'm very, very busy right now, but this is also a very important message and I wanted to get it out on the quick. Right now, A Voice for Men and a lot of other people who are assisting in the project are entering in to the establishment of White Ribbon Fraud Day, which is going to be celebrated and pushed every November 25th. It just happens to coincide with White Ribbon Day, which is sponsored by organizations like the White Ribbon Campaign for Australia, for the UK, for Canada, for some other places, and I understand they're also looking very much to push into the United States with this fraudulent campaign about domestic violence. Our objective here, pure and simple, to put it in the most concise terms that I can think of, is that these are corrupt ideologues that are profiting from lying to the public about the nature, incidents, and solutions to domestic violence. And they have poisoned the well on all that information. Our objective, again, in the most simple terms, is to make them be the ones that drinks from it. And we're not going to stop until that happens. I want to give you a little bit of history on this, and for some of you, this is going to be Feminism 101 again, and for that, my apologies, because most of our audience knows what feminism has been up to in turning the domestic violence industry into an industry, not into a service or a social awareness program to help ameliorate the problem, but to turn it into a money-making adventure. And they've done actually quite well at it, as we're going to see as we go over some of the numbers that I'm going to do in this talk. But the main thing about it is that they have done this successfully by lying to everybody about the nature of the problem. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that, and we're going to discuss a little bit about the lies and why they're so destructive, why in fact they do result in more violence instead of less, which these people are aware of and from which they are profiting. Now, White Ribbon Day Australia. We recently, as many of you know, procured a domain in the United States, which is not trademarked and is not owned by anybody else, whiteribbon.org. That was legally owned by us. We had Erin Pitsey, who many of you know is the founder of the domestic violence shelter movement for women since 1971. She literally started the domestic violence movement for the entire world single-handedly on handouts and a shoestring budget. Since then, of course, it has grown into a corrupt monster, but that is not Erin's fault. However, Erin did step up and make contact with me and other administrative staff for A Voice for Men and offered the proposition that since she is who she is, and she started this whole thing, and with her well-established connections within the DV community, especially within the community of people who are actually telling the truth about domestic violence, people like Martin Fiebert, people like Murray Strauss, people like Don Sutton, people like Denise Hines, many others who are involved in this and are trying to find solutions that are non-gendered, not just because they're non-gendered, but because the scientific evidence points indisputably to the fact that domestic violence is not a gendered issue. This is unfortunately inconvenient for people who make money off of the image of a poor beaten woman in the corner in the shadows shivering with a bloody nose as a darkened silhouette of a man stands over her with his fist clenched ready to deliver another blow. That's what makes people write checks because of the nature of society that we live in. That's what elicits people's sympathy. Men being beaten by women, nobody wants to contribute to, and it is so bad they don't want to contribute to that, even though all the evidence we have suggests the fact that in those homes where that violence is ignored, it traumatizes the children in those homes. They grow up in a highly stressful environment that lends them more toward all the evidence of high psychosocial stress factors like truancy, school failure, teen pregnancy, drug use, running away from home, you name it. If there is a factor out there that negatively impacts the lives of our young people, being in a violent home is one of them. The current domestic violence industry totally ignores this, totally ignores the children that are the victims of families where the mother is the one committing the violence. And so it repeats the cycle. These young people grow up to beat their partners or to select partners who will beat them because, as we know, people have a tendency to act out unfinished business from their childhood in adult relationships. That's the actual cycle that we do know repeats itself. And of course, as I said, and as will be presented throughout this series of critiques and condemnations of the corrupt white ribbon campaigns, we will show you over and over and over again why domestic violence is not a gendered issue. As a matter of fact, you can go to whiteribbon.org. It's the only legitimate source of information on domestic violence currently available. We cannot trust to get it from our government. They lie to us. We cannot certainly trust feminist ideologues because they lie to us for the money involved. Politicians lie for the votes because, of course, protecting battered women is a good vote getter for politicians, just like protecting battered women only is a good money getter for people who are running a corrupt campaign like they are at White Ribbon Australia. Now, going back to that domain, which we have since transferred to the ownership. We honored Erin Pittsey's request and agreed fully. She is the person that should be in charge of whiteribbon.org. She is the person that should own it. She is the person who should have the editorial final say on everything on that site. It should be totally out of our hands. A Voice for Men is providing free web hosting for her in order to support her efforts and technical support, and we will continue to do so for as long as she wants us to. But it's essentially her ball game now. We just want to be there to be cheerleaders for her because she is trying to get the truth out there in the face of all these lies. And now let's go into it. What are the lies? I'm not going to have time certainly to cover all of them in this one short talk on a video, but we'll start with the most recent stuff that came up. And the reason we're doing this is because White Ribbon Australia, after we launched whiteribbon.org, of course, made a lot of noise in Australian media. I got a call from the Sydney Morning Herald saying that they were very, very upset, and they actually sent their CEO to the Australian Parliament to complain that we had stolen their name, that we were usurping their cause, and that they were seeking legal remedies to correct this. Well, apparently they're still seeking legal remedies, and let me divert for just a moment to tell you why they're still seeking legal remedies. Because there are none. We legally procured a domain name in the United States, whiteribbon.org. It is not trademarked in the United States. White Ribbon has been used for well over 150 years by different organizations. There's currently a White Ribbon campaign, I believe, in Russia that has nothing to do with domestic violence. The original use of it was for a women's temperance organization, and of course, ironically, that was about making sure that men couldn't drink. It was another sort of control mechanism from a woman's group. But they were using it long before White Ribbon Australia. Other people have used it. The only trademark in the United States that we know about in terms of White Ribbon is a wine company in California. And since White Ribbon for domestic violence can in no way be confused by White Ribbon for wine, we are within legal and every moral limit to proceed with this and to have transferred ownership to Aaron Pitsey, and that will continue. I can pretty much assure you, I mean, they may be stupid enough. They're certainly smart enough to tell calculated lies and make a couple of $1 million a year doing it, as we're going to explore in a moment. Whether or not they're stupid enough to try to sue me for this, I hope so, because in the process of discovery in a lawsuit, we're going to be able to demonstrate just what lying scumbags all of these people are. We're going to be able to expose how they're committing fraud on the Australian public, how they're lying to them about the nature of domestic violence, how they're grabbing all that money, and very, very importantly, as I'm going to show you here in just a moment, what there is they're doing with it, which is essentially to line their pockets and little else. Well, they do set aside a pretty healthy budget, a little over $400K a year right now, to go out and raise more money, but that ends up back in their pockets. This is a scam, folks. It's a total scam on its face. There is a link in the low bar, by the way, that I would invite you to look at about an article that I published earlier today. It leads to that. It has the financials there. It has the complete breakdown of their income and expenses, and they have somehow, without providing a single service, not one nickel to a battered women's shelter, not one nickel to any sort of prevention program that's recognized anywhere, that has demonstrated any efficacy, not one dime, not one nickel, not one penny of money has gone to any of that. Where does it all go? In their pockets. Let me go over the numbers, just some of them briefly. You'll get a more complete analysis of this in the article I wrote today, which is linked there in the low bar. But let's take a look at a couple of things, and pardon me while I read. Their gross income for 2013 was $2,046,724. $2 million, as opposed to a $1.5 million the year before. So there's some growth there established. And as you go through the whiteribbon.au website, you will see where they're reaching out, where they're getting into government agencies, how they're affecting laws, how they're pushing these lies about domestic violence onto school children, how they're conning their parents out of money, how they're conning the public and the government out of money. But for 2013, they had a gross revenue of $2,046,724. Now, their income for employee, they call it the employee benefit expense, which, for lack of, plain English, paychecks that went to a very small group of people, which are also named, by the way, in the article linked in the low bar, their board of directors and some of their other officials. Over half of that, $1,130,402 went directly into their pockets. They also spent $85,565 to be exact, traveling. I don't know if they went to Paris. I don't know if they went to Athens. I don't know if they went to the Bahamas, where I know that domestic violence is rampant and needs their immediate attention. But they spent well over $85,000 traveling around the world doing something. They spent $416,077 on fundraising expenses. And of course, sometimes you have to travel to do that. But they spent nearly $500,000 so that they could raise $2 million, so that they could pocket over $1 million. That's what we're looking at. There are other expenses listed here, which are a little bit less than straightforward. One category is called other expenses. That totaled to $321,483. We also have another category called purchases. So apparently whiteribbon.au, the Australian branch of the White Ribbon Campaign, purchases things. And in this case, they purchased things that amounted to $58,000 plus. What this all adds up to, just to put this in perspective, is that when you take the 1.1 mil in paychecks, in pocket money for them, and you add 203,000, 416,000, and 85,000 respectively for advertising and marketing, fundraising expenses, and travel and accommodations, you end up with a total of $1.8 million. It's actually $1,835,108. This put them, with their other added purchases and expenses, operating at a net loss for the year of over $400,000. They lost money in a campaign. The one thing that they do is they have an online petition, and we all know those can be horribly expensive to maintain. We've got one going right now that it costs, let me see, nothing. But apparently their online petition, which is literally the, other than spreading propaganda, the only, I guess you would call it a service that they offer, is a petition asking men to commit to not beat women up, not asking parents not to harm their children, not asking women to not harm their children or their husbands, or not asking people not to make their home a place of violence, but simply to ask men to end violence, and only against women. That is the service that White Ribbon provides in Australia. It does the same thing. We have the finances also on the UK and on Canada. We will be getting into them because, sad to say, for White Ribbon campaign, this video that I'm doing now, this talk, the articles, the memes, the Facebooking that is going on right now, the Twitter campaign that we launched officially at 2 o'clock this afternoon, Central Time, US, is just the very beginning. We are determined to make these people drink their own poison water, and we're not going to stop until it happens. People are going to know the truth about what's going on. So we have an organization operating at nearly a $500,000 loss, which of course makes a very, very heart-rending plea for asking for more money. Oh, folks, we're out there fighting the best we can, and we're raising money to do the best we can to raise awareness of how bad men are and how men need to change and how masculinity is the problem. And doing that is so expensive. We lost a $500,000. Please help us by giving more. And for a short time, I'm going to estimate in the future they're going to get it. As a matter of fact, I am going to predict that as a part of this campaign, this discussion that I'm having now, and the other people that are joining us in it, they will probably experience a temporary upsurge in what I like to call Sarkeesian money. When she waves the, oh, somebody said something nasty to me on the internet, please give me $500,000, and people go, oh, of course, we need to help. That's the type of response we're probably going to predict. But I do believe it will be short-term, and in the long term, I believe the toxicity and the fraudulent nature of their work is going to be exposed, and it will eventually pull the rug out from underneath their dirty feet. And why is this so important? Let's take a look at a couple of the lies that are happening right now. And again, this is not going to be news to many of you. You've seen this before. It is just part and parcel to the work of the corrupt domestic violence industry to put out outrageously fraudulent statistics, to claim they're true, to stick them out there, and knowing that the media is going to pick these things up and run with them. By the way, as a side note, in the article that I linked to at the bottom of this discussion, in the low bar there, you will also find a video embedded there by Tom Golden. If you have not seen that video, I highly suggest that you watch it, because it explains precisely how we go from bad methodology in research, from misleading results in research, from results that are framed to fit an ideological agenda, and how that gets transmitted so easily through the mainstream media, and how it can never be taken back once it happens. But there is here, I have somewhere, if I can find it, and I believe it should be close to me here, one of the big highlighted bullet points from the Australian White Ribbon Campaign that basically asserts, well, I don't see it right now, so you'll have to look for it in the article. It is embedded there. But basically asserting that the leading cause of death, disability, and injury for Australian women between 15 and 44 years of age was intimate partner violence. This is not just a lie, it's a really bad lie. It's a really, really disgusting lie. And it is designed to create a sense of panic in donors. So they say, oh my God, our women between 15 and 44 are being, it's worse than car wrecks, it's worse than drug overdoses, it's worse than breast cancer, it's worse than anything. The major problem they have is that men are beating them up. We need to give money to help stop this. Big fat lie. And let's take a look at some of the results of that. This, by the way, the 1 in 3 Foundation, which happens to be a completely legit advocacy group against domestic violence, who want the truth of research out there. They seek to find amelioration and solutions and awareness for all victims of domestic violence and for identification of all perpetrators. That is their purpose. They're not what you would call an MRA group. We don't have any affiliation with them. I'm just quoting from them. They just happen to be one of the few groups out there that are actually taking a look at analyzing this data. So with that said, Michael Flood, who many of you will know as a prominent Australian feminist and scholar on domestic violence and a big proponent, was somewhat of a celebrity within the white ribbon community there in Australia, said some years ago something to the effect that one moment here, bear with me. That basically, I probably should have decided to organize myself a little bit better before starting this, but I know you love me so much, you'll bear with me. Basically, what Michael Flood was saying was an absolutely false statement about the experiences of women during divorce and them being primarily the victims of retributive violence, that it was a rampant problem that didn't happen to men. Here's the actual truth of the matter, though, and these are from legitimate sources. Michael Flood, by the way, was approached by Men's Health Australia and said, hey, Michael, could you provide us some sources for the claims you're making about what happens to women during divorce? Well, he couldn't find any sources. And then later, he apparently did admit that there really weren't any sources, but wasn't really going to retract anything. Here's a quote from 1 in 3. The Australian Institute of Family Studies, 1999, observed that post-separation, fairly similar proportions of men, 55%, and women, 62%, reported experiencing physical violence, including threats by their former spouse. Self-defense is cited by women as the reason for their use of IPV, intimate partner violence, including severe violence such as homicides, in a small minority of cases. Now, Flood was asserting in his lies that the main reason that women resorted to violence, including homicide in these situations, was in self-defense. It was actually a very small, from 5 to 20% was what the women had actually said. After analyzing for verbal aggression, fear, violence, and control by each gender, husbands are found to be no more controlling than wives. not going to be retracted anywhere. This made it through all facets of the mainstream media unchallenged, and then when the truth came out about it, everybody went dead silent. There was somebody else involved in this, I believe an ABC affiliate. The statistics that Michael Flood used and what 1 in 3 uses both come from Vic Health, and basically one of the things that CEO Gerald Rector of Vic Health said was violence against women is the #1 contributor to death and disability in Victorian women aged 15 to 44. That's a direct quote from the CEO that released this so-called study. The response to that from 1 in 3 is that intimate partner violence, not violence against women, is the leading contributor to death, disability, and illness in women aged 15 to 44, according to a single study which has largely been discredited. The omission of the word illness here is critical. Deaths from intimate partner violence, femicide, and suicide made up 2.3% and 12.9% of the disease burden, respectively. Physical injuries, just 0.7%. Substance abuse, tobacco, alcohol, and drug use, 10.2%. Sexually transmitted infections and cervical cancer, 2.2%. And poor mental health, depression, anxiety, and eating disorders, 71.8%. The vast majority of the contribution to the burden of disease in young Victorian women from intimate partner violence is from illness, not injury or death. And I will even challenge that. There's been no causal relationship established between eating disorders and intimate partner violence. There has been none. It's not there. And for us to take every incident of mental health issues in women, say severe chronic anxiety, depression, clinical depression, all forms of eating disorders, for us to take all of that that happened to all Australian women and say that is rooted in intimate partner violence is an accusation made with no substance to it whatsoever. It's like saying intimate partner violence is the cause of all disease. It's an absolutely ludicrous, insane insertion that's not going to fly. So, I mean, there you have it in a nutshell, folks, why we're doing what we're doing. Now, let me tell you just for a minute or two about what we're going to do. First thing I'm going to do is ask for your help. I really do. I don't want money. I don't want this to be an AVFM thing. I want to ask you to one, help whiteribbon.org, and go to that website, look at the interviews with Martin Fibert and Don Dutton and Murray Strauss and Aaron Pitsey and all the real experts on intimate partner violence, and help promote that website. Do what you can to get it on Facebook. Do what you hashtag it under, tweet it under White Ribbon Day, hashtag White Ribbon Day. I would like to make a special appeal to the group of women that are involved in running and conducting Women Against Feminism to help us with this campaign, to promote this honest information for the sake of not only our fathers and brothers and sons, but for the women also that will at some point become victims of domestic violence by men who were raised in families where their mother's violence was ignored and absolutely enabled by campaigns like White Ribbon Australia. This is a social problem. Just for the basics here, let's really get to them, folks. Domestic violence is a learned behavior that is passed down generationally, that is affected by a multitude of factors. They include seeing abuse or being abused as a child, seeing that role model when you grow up, coming from a dysfunctional family. They include substance abuse, poverty, lack of education, mental illness. A host of other problems play into what manifests itself as domestic violence. But gender is not one of them, and anyone who who tells you otherwise is quite simply lying to you. So if we want to find answers to this, we need programs that intervene on mental health issues. We need programs that intervene on family dysfunction. We need programs that assist people out of poverty. We need programs that assist people out of being undereducated. We need a lot of things to happen that will ultimately curtail domestic violence and a whole host of other problems. Because if you look at the root in our prison population, fatherlessness is another one of them. Dealing with that will help reduce domestic violence. But if you look at any range of social maladies that we experience in this culture, you trace lots of them back to the same problems: family dysfunction, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, witnessing abuse, mental health issues, poverty, lack of education. Those are the cornerstones of dysfunctional behavior. Those are the things that cause this. And now we have these scam artists out there, and they're low. I don't care. White Ribbon Australia, please sue me. I don't give a damn. Call it libel, call it libel, call it what you will. But you are a bunch of scum-sucking, pathetic con artists that are ripping people off, and you are causing child abuse to happen as a result of your work. You are the reason there is more child abuse and not less. You're the reason there's more domestic violence in our society, not less. As long as you keep pushing this fraudulent model that falsely claims that the problem is the penis and collecting money off of it, you have qualified yourself as one of society's leeches. And we need to extirpate your work from this culture. We need you to drink your own poison water, and we need you to go away. Pardon the diversion. The other thing that you can do is to get onto this. Right now, there is a lot of content that's going to be coming out on A Voice for Men. I just published a little while ago on YouTube. It will also be going up on the site. Jack Barnes interviewed me about this matter. We had a lengthy discussion about it. He also interviewed Dean Esme, several other people. These will be going out regularly on the site over the next week. Our Facebook meme team has gotten together, and they are producing image memes that describe this problem and what's happening. Please go to our A Voice for Men Facebook page, give us a like, tweet those memes, share them on your Facebook page, pass them around. Also, if you have a blog or website, I don't care if you've had problems with me or AVFM in the past, if you care about doing something about these corrupt ideologues and stopping this nonsense that's happening, this corruption that is running rampant and with government approval, then help us out. Embed this video, embed the other articles. I put a permission to reprint my feature article that is on the front page right now about white ribbon fraud. There is a blanket permission statement from me at the bottom of that article to reprint that on any blog. I don't care if you give me credit or not. I don't care if you link back to the site. But one of the things that you can do is you can help us get the word out there and spread it around. Ask your friends to tweet these articles, these videos, to use hashtag White Ribbon Day, and to get this word out. The White Ribbon Organization for Australia, we know, plans on using White Ribbon Day as their hashtag. I want to see that thing literally overrun with tweets from people like us who are sick and tired of children and women and men and society being lied to and harmed so that a few scuzzbags can make a buck off of this problem. We want to see that end now. So I want to invade that hashtag. I want to brutalize it with the truth. That's what FTSU is about. When we fuck their shit up, it's not physical. We do it with the truth. We shine a light on their lies. And if you go to the White Ribbon Australia website right now, you're going to see more lies than you can possibly count. It's absolutely obscene. Read my article on it. And that is about all I have for right now. I'm running on like zero sleep right now. I've been up writing, formatting videos, doing video editing, sound editing. I probably won't get much sleep this week. This is one of the most important opportunities that has come along in a long time. And I want to start this off with a bang. And I want to establish the fact that every November 25th, henceforth, from now on, is White Ribbon Fraud Day, where there are going to be an increasing number of activists and hopefully more people in the mainstream digging into the fact that these people are lying to the public, collecting money disingenuously, they're pocketing it, they're partying on it, they're laughing all the way to the bank, even as the people they purport to serve are suffering from the problems that they allege they want to solve. With that, I'm going to say good day to you for now, but we'll be back soon with a lot more. Thanks for dropping by.